Hey everybody, it's May of 2022, depending on when you're listening to this. Every May, they take time to acknowledge foster parents, family members, volunteers, mentors, policymakers, child welfare professionals, and other members of the community who help children and youth in foster care find permanent homes and connections. Now, that's what the Children's Bureau has to say on their website, and I think really what we can do is to just go out and help raise some awareness. That's part of our mission here at Foster Care Nation, is we're raising the awareness of the need for people to help kids. There's almost 500,000 children in the youth and foster care systems, and we want to celebrate those who make a meaningful difference in their lives. So to all the foster care parents out there, if you're a foster parent, yeah, we think you're awesome. Now, if you're not a foster parent, that's okay. Share some of these episodes with people, because the initiatives that we work with and some of the people who just have a story to tell, to let us know what this is really like, why some of the people we know have the struggles that they have. This is our job in life. It's just to help others, especially when it comes to children. We are passionate about helping kids understand how to work through these hard things. So share this with somebody, send them an episode. This month, we're going to have a couple amazing guests on here. We're going to start the month out with Rita Sornan. Rita is the CEO and president of the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption. We got a couple other great things coming up this month, so keep your eyes open. And again, share this with somebody. That'll be one of the biggest things that you can do to help raise awareness of the need that is just absolutely overwhelming the kids in our nation right now. You can forget a lot of things, Foster Care Nation, but never forget this. You're listening to Unparalleled Studios.
I signal.
Foster Care Nation, listen up. This is
Foster Care and Unparalleled Journey.
strength for the powerless, courage for the fearful, hope and healing for wounded hearts. Hello and welcome back to Foster Care, an Unparalleled Journey with Jason. And no Amanda, guys. Sorry. Again, she is out doing grown-up stuff, taking care of kids. I think it's a therapy appointment today, although I might be something else as well. So she may be popping in here in a little bit if she gets home on time. She may not. I make no promises. So since I am, the terribly boring one of the two, I will make certain that I always try and bring a guest in so I don't bore you too much. So today I brought in Dr. Arnold and Dr. Arnold. That sounds confusing.
Megan and Hailey.
Megan and Hailey. We'll go with that. How are you guys doing today?
We're good. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, and we talked a little bit before we started recording here, and you guys are both doctors in the sense of chiropractors. And so I have a huge admiration for people like you who take people like me in chronic pain and keep us upright and walking on a regular basis. So
It's always fun to do that.
Oh, yes. I'm going to tell you, that's one of my big struggles in life. I live in chronic pain with a lot of the stuff that I have going on. And so finding people who can do that, it's amazing. I've met a handful of chiropractors who just could not quite seem to do it. Apparently I'm a little tough and grizzly. And I had one guy, there's a couple different schools of chiropractic work, and don't just forgive my ignorance because I don't really know what they're called. There's one that has a table that drops, and that one works wonderfully for me. And the other one is, I call it Greco-Roman wrestling because that's what it feels like. It's probably a more specific term for it than that, but that's what I use.
Sure.
I had one guy, he was a smaller fella, and I am not small, and I am not terribly flexible in a lot of ways. And this poor dude was all but like standing on my leg trying to jump on me to get me to twist the right way, and he never couldn't quite get it to work. And so when I find somebody who could do that work and actually make people feel better, that's amazing. So you guys are at least part demigod in my world, just so you know.
I like to hear that.
Well, and you also have some connection in the foster care and adoption world. So that's another big step for you guys as well. So we're going to start this off with, I'm pretty happy with both of you already.
Right on.
That's our world, right? Foster care and adoption. And so how did you guys get involved in this whole crazy world that we live in?
Well, it was a handful of years ago. We decided that it was time to start a family. And so we had always discussed foster to adopt as being the journey we wanted to take. So we started that. And it seemed to take forever just to go through like training and certifications and this and that and whatever. And then whenever you're finally actually able to, be certified by the state as a foster parent and a clear house, then you have to wait for the kiddos to show up. And it took 2 years before we got a call.
Yeah, our agency knew that we were on more of the adoption track versus the emergency placement track.
Sure.
So they knew, we're not going to call Megan and Hailey just because a kiddo needs a home. Although now I think they're at that, like, okay, we need Megan and Hailey to take kiddos because they need a home. So it did take a while, but they certainly knew what we signed up for and were good about that idea. So.
Well, you guys are down in the great state of Texas, right?
Yeah.
Okay, here's the one mark against you, is that you guys are Texans.
Well,
and
I have family in Missouri. Does that count?
Right now, sometimes we feel that way too, so it's okay.
Yeah.
To be fair, I was stationed for a while in West Texas, in a little bitty town of San Angelo, Texas, and that was most of my Texan experience. And
I have a lot of family there.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I understand your feelings.
There is nothing there but sand and oil rigs and cactuses and jackrabbits the size of German shepherds. I don't understand that. They have deer the size of German shepherds too. I don't understand how that happened. It's like we stepped into a little bit of Alice in Wonderland while I was out there. It was very, very strange. But being from Missouri and remembering like what it's like to have seasons, West Texas was not fun when I got there in the summer.
No.
No, and I spent summers there, so I understand.
Oh my goodness. 130 degrees for like 3 weeks straight.
And that's the low.
I thought we were close to hell. I was like, it's not quite hell, but it's got to be around the corner somewhere.
We're in Houston. It's not much better weather-wise. So
no, but you have grass in Houston, right?
A little bit, and hurricanes. So
and an ocean.
Yes.
So
sort of.
Yeah, you have some benefits there. I don't have any personal hate on Houston, but that West Texas experiment was not the thing I would like to go back and repeat. As a matter of fact, when my wife wanted our family to go on vacation and she mentioned Texas, I was like I had that visceral reaction. Like, I was like, I started sweating. I went, Texas? Are you kidding me? And so we looked up Corpus, and we took the family down to Corpus Christi, and that was a much better experience.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we went to Corpus. I think it was like 2 weeks before the vacation season down there actually started. And in Corpus, it was much better weather at that time of year. So yeah, it was a lot better. So I'm going to assume you guys, I'm not too mad at you for being in Texas, but I also know Texans, and I just have to ask, because you mentioned having taken a long time to have your local DFS, I don't know what's called down there, DFS, DIFAS, CPS, whatever, your agency call you for a kid. And I'm just thinking that same-sex couples, that has to be a difficult thing, especially in Texas, at least for the time I was there, it would have been.
Yeah, so it's more open now, but there's definitely, depending on where you are, here in Houston, it's pretty, I guess, accepted. Although there is still a large pull for which judge is in charge of which child, and are they going to allow same-sex couples to foster. So it's still left to the discretion of people that maybe it shouldn't be. So it goes both ways.
I mean, it was a little bit of that, but also we lived in a 3-story townhome, and just the floor plan wasn't always right for the placement that was needed.
Yeah.
So we had one bedroom down on the first floor and another bedroom on the third floor, and you can't put a toddler unattended on the first floor and that type of thing. So sometimes it was just literally like how the floor plan worked.
Yeah.
If you put them on the third floor, you'll always know when they try and leave.
That is true. It's been an interesting journey for sure.
Yeah, we have a very old house. I think this place was built in 1903. And it's a big, beautiful old home. But the staircase in this place is, I don't think it's 4 foot by 6 foot. And it's this quick little spiral straight up. And I look at that, I'm like, every time a kid goes up that one, I'm terrified. I feel like we should have a net at the bottom to catch them just in case.
Right.
Yeah. So some of those are always, those little pieces that we don't really think about can be a struggle with this. But, how many kids have you guys had come through your home out there?
We had one that we were more of a respite, very short term situation. He was here for a week. And then the 2 we have now are the 2 that are staying, that we are in adoption prep now. So we have not had the opportunity to house a lot of kids. So,
well, I'm going to warn you that there is something about this that happens to you, and you look up and you go, how did I end up with 8 kids in my house? Oh, I'm just going to believe that
actually.
Yeah, no, that would not surprise me, honestly.
Right.
We're open for 3, but we got a sibling group of 2 a year and a half ago almost.
Mm-hmm.
And they're here to stay. So
we were lucky to get that placement. The parental rights were being terminated rather soon when we got them.
they were almost legally free to adopt.
Right.
So.
They were almost legally free to adopt. So because of COVID, a court date got pushed back. So therefore it didn't happen whenever it was supposed to happen. So it got pushed to the next court date. But it has pretty much been on track. Just a few, I always call it moving at the speed of red tape and paperwork. So you're just constantly waiting for paperwork to clear and that kind of thing. So you're just kind of, I don't know what other people's foster experience is, but you're at the mercy of paperwork and kind of deadlines and this and that and whatever. And you're just kind of there to shuffle along with the flow.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I did tell our agency if they, I have never had the baby experience. So if any baby needs to be taken care of, I kind of want to.
Well, I am that weird guy. I will give me 3 addicted newborns before you try and put 1 teenager in my house.
Yeah.
That's my world.
I've heard about teens being a
little more difficult.
A trip.
We thought we would end up taking care of older kids, but we got toddlers. So
yeah,
it's been an interesting journey.
Well, teens can be wonderful, rewarding experiences. However, God did not wire me that way. I was wired for addicted newborns. It's weird, I know. But through my own childhood trauma story, if you want to call it that, I learned the mechanism of dissociation at a very young age, and I didn't have the words to put around that until the very recent time. But I have the ability to turn to just not really hear the screaming, I guess is the best way to put it. And I can hold a screaming baby for hours, and I'm okay with that. Especially when I know it's a brand new baby who came into this world, and the only thing that they know is withdrawals. Because I've seen a grown man or woman going through withdrawals from things like meth and heroin and fentanyl and the harder drugs, and you see them going through the withdrawals trying to get clean, and it's hard to watch a grown adult go through that. It just looks so miserable. And the idea that this brand new baby was brought into this world, and the only experience they have is life is that pain of withdrawal, with no hope of because I'm going to tell you, you bring a baby in my house, I promise you I'm not going to let them have any heroin to make them feel a little better, to ease withdrawals, right? So they have to go through that experience with no relief whatsoever until it clears their body and their brain. And I'm not even certain that it clears their brain entirely, because there are little pieces we've seen. We have several kids that we adopted through the system, and all of our kids have some level of drug exposure. Some of them more severe than others. But the long after effects, the long-term after effects that happen are just like, it's still there. It's still there.
And unfortunately, there's no studies past the age of 5 of what this might do to them. So
yeah, there's something about ethical studies on introducing drugs to newborn babies that seems kind of hard to do.
Right. Yeah. We have a 2 and a 4-year-old and who were drug exposed. We now know that. So there are definitely things that we see in them that I'm assuming is due to meth exposure and benzo exposure and that kind of stuff. So definitely understand.
Yeah. And I'm going to assume it's probably the same across the nation because most people I talk to say it is the same in their area. But for us, heroin and meth are both apparently ridiculously cheap. And
yeah, I'm assuming.
I mean,
I've never priced it out, but it seems to be a common use.
The cost of milk has gone up so much. I can't imagine that the cost of meth hasn't at least kept up to some extent, but apparently it's still entirely gettable by just about anyone. And it's has it's easy access and low cost.
Yeah.
And so many kids are coming into care with a lot of that exposure, and people like us are the ones who get to do the study of how that affects them and try and help them walk through it. You know, with your experience, if you said you have kids who were born exposed, what's that been like for you guys to try and walk through something like that? That I'm assuming you probably don't have a whole lot of exposure to doing that, walking that road yourself, right?
We do not, but what's interesting for us is we're chiropractors, but our focus is actually pediatric chiropractic. So we deal with the neurology of these kiddos. So in our clinic and our practice, we've taken care of, autism and ADHD and sensory processing disorder, all that kind of stuff. So when our kiddos came to us, we saw a lot of similarities in neurology with how they have grown up and what they're dealing with versus the kids that we see as patients. So while we do think a lot of the neurological concerns they have are probably drug induced, it's the same mechanisms for their neurological pathways. So we've actually been really excited because what we do as a profession has helped our own babies develop a little bit better than they would without it. So it's, the sleep issues are probably the worst for us. Sometimes the sensory overload has been problematic, and certainly tantrums, they are a bit more extreme than a typical toddler, but outbursts. But the things like our babies came to us, our 4-year-old was almost 3, 2.5, I guess. And our youngest was 16 months, but they have been in the system since he was 4 months old, right?
Yeah.
So they had actually been through 3 other foster homes before us, and no one knew how to deal with them. So I'm assuming some of their excessive, we like to call it fight or flight behavior, was probably there from day one due to exposure.
Yeah, if you look at the behavior notes and that type of thing, it would appear that way.
Yeah. And so it, like you said, you kind of can turn off the screaming child, the screaming baby. That's literally what we got, was a screaming baby. Our youngest is chill. He hasn't really he's just now throwing tantrums, but they seem to be quote unquote normal for his age. But our oldest, her screams and her crying and everything were definitely intense and definitely not
she was normal. Hours.
Yeah, for hours and hours and hours. So we've had to not only have the mommy instincts of, okay, there's something there that's some sort of emotional component has not been met for you, versus our doctor instincts of there's some sort of biochemical component that's going on here. And as soon as we got the redacted file a few months ago, since we're preparing for adoption, we were like, oh, that's what's going on. And we've been able to do our thing for our own kids. But
Well, it was also difficult at one point because until those parental rights were terminated from the bio parents, we were still having to do in-person visits, and come to find out, there was still drug transfer happening. Mm-hmm. And so whatever they were going through and trying to, I guess, basically get clean, it's not really toddlers going through, addiction programs, but, what they were doing to kind of detox that out naturally was they were just still getting exposed to it on a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis sometimes, because it was something that we couldn't help. And it was just on clothing, on gifts, on toys, and, things coming from their lodging and then coming back into our home and us having to kind of monitor that.
It was definitely like a re-exposure,
right?
On a weekly basis.
And then you would have all of those behaviors amplified all over again. So, I mean, I can't imagine what that's like as an only life experience for a newborn, especially since not only are they so small, but just, that is so not fair. I mean, you have literally no other life experience except for that yet. But also on a little older kids having that experience and then being pulled back in it kind of on this roller coaster ride just from, re-exposure and transfer, et cetera. That has to also be hard because whenever something would heal, it would automatically get re-exposed again. And then you have all of those traumas, all those behaviors and whatever resurface.
And they have no way to tell you how they're feeling.
Right. And then they can't communicate. So it's just interesting. To say the least.
Interesting and hard.
Yeah, it's hard.
Very hard.
Because, I don't know about you guys, but my wife has that mothering instinct pretty heavy in her heart and soul. And so she wants to nurture that problem away. And, for me, again, I'm just wired weird. I can hold a screaming baby. I know how to, put the skin on skin contact and just sit with them in that. And it doesn't affect me nearly as much as it does most people, which makes me weird, but it also feeds that whole idea I have that I'm here with a purpose. There's a plan for me showing up, and apparently this is part of it. And so that's what I'm supposed to be doing, so I'll do that. I'm really good at it.
That's great.
I'm a baby whisperer. If you have a baby that won't sleep or that cries, just give them to me. We'll be good.
See, Megan has to put our youngest down because he's so attached to me that he will cry if I put him down. But we jokingly call him my barnacle because he's literally just on me all the time. And I don't have the heart to put him down, but he will do anything for Megan.
I just march him upstairs and say, okay, we're going to go fix your pillow. Let's go, get your blanket ready. And he says, okay. And he just marches upstairs and does it. And I'm like, I don't know why that's so hard, but apparently, something about my conviction of, fluffing the pillow and getting the blanket ready is really resonates with him.
Every child responds differently to every human in their life. It's wild to see how that works because we have genetic, biological siblings, you share genetics. Mm-hmm. And then you see how differently they react, each one of them to me or each one of them to my wife. And I don't know that we're supposed to understand why it works the way it does. It just does. How about that?
Yeah. Fair.
I don't think it's not necessarily my wife's fault that they listen to me better. I think it also helps for me because being the big guy, with the big mean face and the big black beard and the deep voice, and, I have the benefit of dad voice, which can be taken very, very seriously by young children more often. And that's just my benefit. So they listen to me better typically, but she also is a very caring and nurturing human. And sometimes, I don't know if you know this or not, but sometimes toddlers especially act just like little psychopaths, and they learn how to manipulate that.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
We know.
Yes.
And we're quickly figuring that out. So
yes, yeah. I laughingly sometimes joke about toddlers being miniature psychopaths, but if you were to follow the science there, it looks a lot like that for a reason because
their brains are growing so rapidly they don't even know what they're doing.
Yes, and if it works, why wouldn't you continue to do that?
Right.
So yeah, I understand it. I don't necessarily always like it, but I understand it.
They know exactly which buttons to push.
Yes.
So,
Especially the 4-year-old.
Yeah.
She's like the queen of pushing buttons.
and she just wants any sort of reaction, whether it's good or bad.
You're just like, oh God, I'm exhausted.
So how many kids do you guys have in the house with you right now?
2.
2, but she feels like 12. So boy and a girl. The girl is older. She's like 12 people, and he's like 1. So
I get it.
it's either 2 or a baker's dozen.
Yeah, I get it. I totally get it because we've had those kids. Our journey has been almost a decade and a half long now in this world, and we have had somewhere between 20 and 30 kids who've come through our house. And I mean, they're so different, just so wired, so different. It's amazing how 2 kids will show up from the same home, the same experience, and just have such total different reactions to what they've been through.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like you're dealing with humans that are completely different, and in every way you would never have guessed that they were necessarily siblings unless maybe they happen to look alike.
Ours look just alike, but they are definitely different personalities.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, they teach us so much, don't they?
I'm looking for the lesson in patience right now.
Well, maybe I have a friend of mine actually who runs a dad's group who has a patience course out that he's put out there, and maybe that's something that I should look at putting out there for people, because we all struggle with that one, don't we?
Yeah.
I mean, humans in general struggle with that.
Yeah.
So foster care is just a whole other level.
Yes. It's patience 2.0 that we're supposed to have a grasp on, and we don't always have a good grasp on that when we get started.
Yep.
So I'm curious, as far as like beginning this journey, I know that I think Megan, you said that you guys knew from the beginning that you were interested in the foster to adopt.
Yes.
Now, I always try to find the question behind the story. I know that most of us don't just wake up one day and say, yeah, I think I'm going to do foster to adopt. Like, there's usually a story behind that. What does that look like for you? What was it that pushed you in that direction?
Yeah, you want to go first?
Sure. So my mom had a lot of trouble carrying full term, and finally she was able to carry, her first child.
You're here.
Yeah, I'm here. So like first child came, and they knew that they wanted a second child, and it took forever, and they didn't think that was going to happen. She kept miscarrying and all that kind of stuff. And they were working with an adoption agency, and I just remember kind of being a part of that conversation. I was about 5 years old, and I just kept being told, like, do you want to be a big sister? And, this is how it's going to happen. And right when they were at that kind of finish line, like there was a baby that I believe that they were matched with. My mom found out she was pregnant, and so that adoption got put on hold, and then she was able to carry for full term. And so I have a sister that's about 5.5 years younger than me, and they just never adopted. They had 2, and they were fortunate enough to get it both biological, and so that's how that happened. But I just remember being a part of that conversation. And so it's always just kind of been in the back of my mind. And then whenever I was in 4th grade, I had a classmate that was, I guess, foster to adopt. So she was matched with her birth family whenever I met her. And, we are still friends to this day, a little out of touch, but still friends. And so her experience and me being kind of aware of her situation in 4th grade just kind of made me always think about, my sister's, I guess, like the potential of having an adopted sister, and then, a good friend who was adopted, and then just what I wanted to do whenever I got older.
Yeah. For me, I've always known that hormone-wise, I was jacked up, basically. I actually have had uterine cancer twice, and no longer have a uterus. So that was something that I had to come to terms very early on that I was never going to carry a child. And being a same-sex couple, there are no surprises in that department either.
True.
And Megan also didn't necessarily want to carry a child. So we have been through the whole road of fertility treatments and whatnot, and it just was not the plan for us.
Yeah.
So
not only like, it was probably a good thing that I always wanted to adopt because I found out that I couldn't carry.
yeah.
My
sister is adopted, so she's 13 years older than me. So my mother was a huge CPS. She was like big man on campus, CPS, whatever they're called. I don't know what her title was, but for the state of Texas, she was pretty high up there in the department. And so foster care was always a part of my life. So my mom was a licensed marriage and family counselor. I knew all the stories. I was exposed to the entire system as a young child. So adoption always seemed like the thing I was going to do. Now, the shift from do we go through a private adoption agency to foster to adopt wasn't really the decision until we started the process.
right.
But we did know that there are so many children that have a traumatic beginning. Why don't we help them? And that was just kind of the
snowball,
the conversation. And we started the process for private adoption. It just didn't feel like what we wanted to do. And we didn't necessarily say that, hey, we had to have a baby. We actually wanted to help older kids and be a home for older kids. It just so happened that we got toddlers. We weren't planning on 2 toddlers at all. We literally thought, okay, maybe there will be a 12-year-old or an 8-year-old or something like that. So as soon as we started with our agency here in Houston, we had the conversations when we were going through training. They were like, okay, we know y'all want straight adoption, but would you be willing to do foster to adopt? And there was really just no question about it. Certainly. And it was fun. So while we haven't had the experience of a lot of kids coming into our house, it's been an interesting ride knowing that, like, we've been connecting with so many other foster parents and foster groups on Facebook and all that kind of stuff. And it's, everyone has their own stories and their own experiences. I feel like we've been quite fortunate to have ours.
Literally everyone's experience is different.
Yeah. We knew, like, even though our kiddos have some neurosensory issues and the short time they've been in this planet has been quite traumatic, we have really loved that we've been able to put not only our hearts and soul into their care, we've been able to use our expertise for them as well to help them have an even more stable situation. So,
and they're great kids.
Yeah, they're awesome kids.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of friends that have done foster to adopt as well. So it's nice to be able to connect with them and say, okay, this is what's going on. I will say, though, that we never anticipated the fact that foster care as foster parents can also be traumatic. We were not prepared for that.
The trauma inflicted on the foster parents.
Yeah. So it's been interesting. I think our story is probably a lot more of the silver lining and positive story, because we've not had to deal with, like, only just now do we have random inspections. Like, we never had any surprise visits for a while. Like, granted, COVID probably had more to do with that than anything.
It was more COVID dependent than I think, anything.
Yeah. But we have not had to experience the heartbreak of, getting attached to a child and then reunification happening, which I know is ultimately the goal. But we've really had the experience that we're expecting, I guess. It's been, they knew we wanted to adopt. And I know that not everyone sees the foster to adopt situation as the ideal situation, but it seemed like what we were going to do.
Yeah. And I read something just the other day, a post I saw online somewhere where somebody was talking about, how she was tired of hearing all these people praying that God would bring a kid to their house for them to adopt, because it means that the kid goes through all this heartache and all. And I'm like, I kind of get tired of people who look at it that way, because the truth is that we all know that there are kids out there who need help, who need a place. And we all know that as lovely as it would be if everybody could put away their drugs or whatever their addiction or their vice is, or could figure out how to handle their anger and end up in healthy relationships, that would be amazing if everybody would just take care of their life that way.
It's not realistic, though.
But it ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
It ain't going to happen. And so we're here for those kids who fall through the cracks and don't have that place to land. And I totally understand what you're saying there.
They're usually not coming from fantastic situations. That's why they're in a system.
Yep.
Yeah, and there are some we have seen plenty of stories where maybe a kid was taken wrongfully, probably shouldn't have been taken. And they were, and they end up with that reunification happening. We actually interviewed a gal a while back, and they took her kids out of her home on something related to failure to thrive. I'm going to get it all wrong. But she has a podcast called, I think it's the F Word, Foster Care is the name of her podcast. Yeah, I love the name. But and they told the story of how CPS came in and took her kids because they all were very, very small. And the truth is that she's a very small woman and her husband is not a very big guy either. And all of her kids were very small because that's just genetics. We've got a little one staying with us right now, and she's not here for failure to thrive. She came out of the hospital born addicted, but I think Amanda took her to the doctor yesterday or the day before, and she is 6 months, and she is currently at the 1% mark on the height chart. 1%. She's at the bottom of the list. She's just now getting onto the list at 6 months. Then we found out through some other people that her biological father is a whopping 5'1".
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So you look at okay, well, it makes sense. She may not be the tallest girl ever. We're not going to make any big investments in the WNBA for her, because it's a good possibility she's not going to see anything like a basketball rim, except looking way, way up in her life ever. But that's just how she is. And sometimes those parents end up with the raw end of the stick, and hopefully the system realizes their mistakes before it gets too awful detrimental to their kids. But we're just here to do the best we can in the situations that are placed in front of us.
Yeah.
So you guys talk about having had your own journey towards foster care and kind of having had the experience that you expected to have. What's on the horizon for you guys? What are you guys looking forward to?
Well, adopting is a big thing for us right now. Our oldest doesn't exist on paper, so we've literally been waiting on a delayed birth certificate for 9 months now.
Yes.
So our little one's already in adoption prep, but big sister's got to come along too. So that's our big thing. So for us, our agency closes houses the moment you adopt. So we won't,
at least
for a year. So we won't be able to foster for at least a year after that, unless we magically got a child right now before we adopted. But yeah, I don't know. We haven't really, because we've been trying to learn the ropes of our toddlers, we haven't really discussed whether we would open our home up again to do maybe more emergency placements or anything like that. So it's been, I don't know. Well, you have anything to add to that?
I'm just trying to figure out the day-to-day at the moment.
Yeah. It's, right now we're in that world of, okay, we've got therapies on Wednesdays. We don't have visitations anymore, fortunately. So we're not really going all across Houston for that.
Set schedule now.
But we have a really set schedule. I don't know if we're gonna shake that up at all.
Well, our oldest does require a lot of therapies. And so it's constantly trying to accommodate that.
Yeah.
Hey, Papa, guess what?
What?
I need new clothes. Baby needs new clothes.
Where do you think we could go find some cool designs to wear?
Oh, I think I have an idea. I mean, we've got some awesome designs for people to wear.
Well, I didn't think about that. You go over to our website. What is that one again? It's tpublic.com/fostercarenation. Yeah, I think we got t-shirts and tank tops and hoodies and sweatshirts and
Baby onesies.
They don't have any dad-sized onesies there, do they?
I don't think so, but the baby onesies are super adorable.
Yeah, they are. Hey, we got some kids hoodies and short sleeve t-shirts, long sleeve t-shirts. Maybe we should go over there and check it out. Where's that again?
It's over at T Public, right?
Yeah.
Foster Care Nation?
Yeah, teepublic.com/foster care nation. So I understand you guys, have a really busy life, and your agency when they stop your foster license for a while after an adoption, I totally get it. I think for a lot of parents, a lot of people, that seems kind of like, why would you do that? But trust me, when you have one show up that's staying forever, that is a big change in your life, right?
Yeah.
And these kids need a lot of attention, especially when they come from hard places. Especially when they come from really hard places. And so that's an amazing, enjoyable time, as you get to know these kids. And I mean, hard, don't get me wrong. I have not yet met a kid who is really always terribly easy. We've had a couple that were pretty easy, but they don't stay that way for too long usually, because when they get comfortable and those traumas start to come out, and it's a challenge for us, for all of us. And so, I understand why they do that. So I would just, number one, say, enjoy that time. Enjoy that time with your little ones. And number two, you guys mentioned that, with your profession, you've learned how to help some of these kids with some sensory processing issues, things like that. Can you talk about that just a little bit? Because quite frankly, I'm terribly curious. I have kids with lots of processing and or sensory issues and things like that we have to learn to work through. And nobody ever told us about this stuff, and so we kind of sucked at it at the beginning, and now we're kind of okay at it, with the experience level we have. But how do you help kids who've been through stuff like that?
There's all sorts of pathways for that, but basically what we do professionally is called functional medicine and chiropractic care. So in the chiropractic realm, we're doing a lot of brain balance therapies. So we have this one like music therapy situation that helps the hemispheres of the brain talk to each other, and it makes people a little less anxious. It makes them a bit more coordinated. It really just helps lay down the foundations for healthy neural pathways. And when you do that for a little one, especially one that has had different types of trauma or different types of developmental delays, maybe not reaching their milestone as much as possible, really working on those exercises is quite beneficial. From the functional medicine perspective, we're dealing with nutritional deficiencies. Do you have a picky eater that's not willing to eat more than chicken nuggets and mac and cheese? Maybe they have some food intolerances. Maybe they're not getting the vitamins and minerals that they need. We look at all of those types of things to help balance the biochemistry. So in babies or young toddlers that have had drug exposure, or maybe not even that, maybe they were, they could, even if mom was on fertility treatment, she probably was super deficient in B vitamins. Therefore, the baby's going to be deficient in those vitamins as well. So we're always focused on the restoring balance to the biochemistry and the neurology, so that we can hopefully help these babies and kiddos grow up to be happy, healthy humans. So that's what we do.
Balance, restoring balance.
Yeah.
So for those of us who aren't in Houston, to bring the kids to you, to help us out with that, I'm curious, what can we do just as your average run-of-the-mill foster parent? Is there somebody, necessarily like a professional to talk to, or is there something we can do on our own to help this?
Certainly. So, I am a big believer that kiddos need their team of wellness experts. So obviously pediatric chiropractors are our favorite, but OTs, PTs, speech therapists, all that kind of stuff, working hand in hand together with their pediatrician and their traditional medicine type of team as well. But it's always fun with foster care systems. Like I'm in a bunch of the local foster care groups on Facebook. So the moms or the dads are always asking for I guess, holistic wellness options or holistic healthcare options, most likely a pediatric chiropractor is the best person to talk to for that kind of stuff. Functional medicine doctors as well would be really great. We actually one of our brands is called NutriTots. We developed supplements for kiddos with these situations. So if they, maybe like you were talking about failure to thrive a little while ago, those kids that just aren't eating enough because they've been through a traumatic event, or they're picky eaters because they've got neurosensory issues or things like that. That's kind of our jam. That's where we create the supplemental products that hopefully they will love and be able to use and get healthy. So it's definitely with foster kids, most of the focus tends to be more on mental health and providing them with the trauma-informed type of care that they deserve. But they also need a wellness team for everything else to be just healthy children in general. And I think that's where people like us kind of thrive and come in and help them. So.
All right. Well, let me pick your brain just a little bit because we have a few minutes left here, and I'm going to be a little bit selfish here. We have a little guy. He is 6 years old, and a couple years ago he had a bowel obstruction, and he went from a kid who was fairly well potty trained to a kid who has no idea when he needs to go half the time. And we've been struggling through that with him. And that's a pretty big struggle, especially as a kid who's going into kindergarten and all the. I mean, I don't know if you know this or not, but even in kindergarten, some of those kids can be fairly mean. So he's dealing with a lot of that stuff, and we know that. And quite frankly, I have no idea where to go to help this kid with this, because all the doctors we've talked to are like, we'll try this, but I really don't know. So when you run across something like that, I don't have a pediatric chiropractor anywhere around me that I know of. So how would you go about helping a kid with something like that? Is that your world there? Is that something you guys? So what is it that I should be looking for to help this kid who has this really specific problem?
The first question is, what was the intervention for the bowel obstruction? Did he have to have it removed? Was there a surgical issue?
No, we did. I think it was a lower dose Miralax regimen for a while until he was able to at least get back to normal biology. Yeah.
So part of the problem, like, I'm not a huge Miralax fan. I know that's the gold standard prescription for that, but it's just propylene glycol. So they act when you are so constipated and you have to use things like that to finally have bowel movements and get things regular, your nervous system almost forgets how to do it on its own. So there can be I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. Basically a disconnect between the brain-body connection, the nervous system's ability to
identify,
fully recognize that, hey, I've got to go to the bathroom now, after you've been through that situation. The other thing is that in itself can be somewhat of a traumatic event for a small child. So they may be having more of a mental block to getting that sorted again. My first step there is I do always recommend chiropractic or physical therapy, even if you don't have a chiropractor, to make sure that the nervous system is well balanced and the function is there. Beyond that, it's going to take, what are they eating? What's the diet like? Are they sensitive to something? Is he still constipated and having bowel obstructions? Are you having to rely on Miralax to go? There's all sorts of chemistry involved there.
Yeah, and then making sure that there's enough fiber and water being consumed to help the natural process occur.
We had
fiber and peanut butter and jelly.
No. Yeah, I mean, that's our kids' favorite too. So a lot of times you have to discern whether it is a structural or chemical issue, or is it a trauma response. So is the regression happening because he couldn't go before? And did the bowel obstruction happen because of trauma? That's a question too.
Right. Is it a control response to trauma? That was something that we were going through last year with our now 4-year-old. So when she was about 3.5, we were in the same boat. And we had to kind of work through that. She got, I guess her trigger response was tied into the start of potty training, or the beginning of the conversation of potty training. And then
she didn't have a good response in a previous foster care.
Correct. So it was, her remembering how it occurred in the previous foster home, and then combining, making sure that she knew that she was in a safe environment and that she did have control over, pull-ups and all that kind of stuff. Making sure that she wasn't eating anything in her diet that was upsetting her stomach and possibly like causing any type of constipation.
Yeah.
So come to find out, she's very gluten and dairy intolerant. And so removing that and introducing her to like fruit smoothies where you can hide in things like
spinach,
greens and spinach and stuff like that kind of gets muted by berries and, protein powder and all that kind of stuff, was actually helping with her digestion and making sure that she was consuming more fiber and fruits and veggies.
And she's only just now at 4 and almost 4.5, able to recognize when she has to go to the bathroom.
Right.
So I think you really have to discern what's the mechanism here. Is it structural, chemical, or is it?
And it is
trauma?
Part of the delay. If you were a part of trauma, so young, then everything's kind of delayed. And so it sort of makes sense that this recognition for this bodily process might also be a delayed, becoming conscious of what your body is saying to you. Could be delayed.
Yeah, that sounds like a whole lot of work, and that's kind of part of what we've been working our way through the last couple of years.
Yeah,
it's not a simple solution for
I
sure.
just need you to poop.
Right?
I need you to poop on the potty, and I need you to know when and how to do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Potty training is not our expertise because we're struggling in that department too.
No, the struggle is real.
But we certainly understand the constipation or we actually call our children stop and go because our oldest gets constipated and our youngest has never had a solid bowel movement. So we're on both sides of that spectrum. So
I'm glad I'm not the only one with poop issues in my life.
No, it's everyone.
It is ridiculous how much poop is part of it.
Probably need to talk more about poop than we do. So,
well, I'm definitely, because I know that we're in a small town in rural Missouri. We're an hour west of St. Louis, so we do not.
Which town?
Are you familiar with the St. Louis area?
Sort of.
Okay, the next county west of that is St. Charles.
Okay, well, I have family in Joplin, and I've had family in Prescott. I don't know where that is. And then my grandfather grew up in Avery and Benton County.
Oh, I know some of those. Joplin's down in the southwestern corner of the state. We're about an hour west of St. Louis.
Okay.
So we're in that area, and so there's not a whole lot. St. Louis is. I don't want to talk smack on the town, but. We don't always have a whole lot of additional resources here. We're one of the smallest big towns you've ever met. So we don't always have all the access to all the benefits that you would have in a larger town. But quite frankly, I would not want to live in the larger town myself. I've been through my time in the military. I've existed in big towns and cities and environments and in small ones, and I do appreciate the rural places here in Missouri where we live. It makes life so much easier. Yeah. So, I want to thank you guys so much for showing up today and answering a couple of my personal questions and a lot of the bigger questions as well. So, thank you so much for your time and for both Hailey and Megan jumping on here, because I know, Megan, just so you know, Hailey didn't think you would be up to it and willing. So, I said, you sound like me and my wife. I'm the one who's like, oh, yeah, I'm up for talk anytime. Go for it. And my wife looks at me and goes, no, I have not had time to prepare for that. So, yeah, I just appreciate you guys showing up here and helping us out and telling your story today. And
thank you.
hopefully helping out a lot of foster parents across this whole journey, and allowing us to learn from your experience.
We appreciate you having us on.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Foster Care Nation, thank you for listening to Hailey and Megan's story. Now take her knowledge and wisdom to heart so you can create love and healing in your family and community. Be sure to come back next week. We have new episodes every Tuesday. If you'd like to share your story as a guest, you can reach us at jason@fostercarenation.com. You can connect with other like-minded people on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/fostercareuj. And don't forget, we have an account over at Buy Me a Coffee. It's like a virtual tip jar where you can help us fund our mission for as little or as much as you want. It's at buymeacoffee.com/fostercare. The links to everything are in the show notes in your podcast player or at fostercarenation.com. And as always,
You are so super awesome. I think you guys are cool. Yeah. Thank you for listening. Thanks.
Unparalleled Studios.
Studio.